Hello, and welcome back to my video series on how to use Google SketchUp. In today's lesson, we will model the letter E and move it around. In doing so, we will use many of the tools that we learned from lessons 2 through 5. We will also learn how to use the Move tool and the Rotate tool.
Okay, so let's pick up where we last left off, and we want to go ahead and get some more practice modeling things inside of SketchUp, as well as using the newly learned Push and Pull tool, as well as the Line tool. So let's go ahead and for today's project, what we're going to do is kind of sketch a letter, the letter E exactly, just because it has nice sharp right angles and it's more rectangular compared to the other letters of the alphabet. So what we're going to do is, again, we'll go ahead and just start a new project. So we'll go over here and say new. And then we'll go ahead and just create a new project. So we're started here again. And we'll do the same thing like we did last time. First, since we have the selection tool, we'll select the person and remove him from the screen. Hit the delete button. We'll go ahead and just close this for right now, but we'll go to the model info button on the far right hand side and select the format in terms of millimeters, as well as the precision at 0.00. And then we'll go ahead and hit the X button. And the next thing that we'll do is change our perspective or projections to the top again. And I always recommend just starting from down here, just because it's easier to kind of work starting from the top and then pulling it into a 3D object. So next we'll select our line tool, and we'll go ahead and just select it for this top one right here. To make things a little bit easier, we're not going to work exactly in the origin for right now. We're going to move a little bit to the right hand side just so you can see things a little bit more clearly. And we'll just start at an arbitrary point down here and just move up, and we see that again, that green line. And for our letter, we're going to make this 100 millimeters, let's say. And since it's pretty small, because just by default you start very zoomed out, we're just going to zoom in so that we can see things a little bit more clearly. So right here you can see I zoomed in, but the structure that we're starting to draw is towards the bottom of the screen. You want to move it a little bit more closer to the middle. So what I'm going to do is actually hit escape. Then I'm going to go over here and select the pan tool, which is the little hand one. And then I'm just going to move it up so that it moves into the middle. And then go reselect the line tool. So next we're going to go over here to the endpoint, and we're going to draw a line. And we're going to draw this so that it's about, let's say, 75 millimeters. So we type in the number 75 and hit enter. And then we're going to go down here, and then we're going to make the first part of our letter. And what we're going to do is we're going to make this 20 millimeters. So we type in the number 20, select it there, and then we're going to draw this one back. And we're going to stop at, let's say, 55. Hit enter. And then we're going to go down again and type in the number 20 and hit enter. Then we're going to go back out, and then you can see once you start moving to the right, the program again will kind of know that you're trying to set something up so that everything's kind of like even with each other, and you can kind of not type in that number, and then I'll just move it down for you. Likewise, when you move down here, it kind of understands that you want something that's maybe 20 millimeters, so you can move it down a little bit. Do you see it says on green axis 20 millimeters, and you can select it. Move it back here, and it'll kind of understand that you're drawing again something that has kind of like a systematic or uniform pattern, so you select it there. Move it down again so it says 20 millimeters. Go back out. You wait until it says from point. And then you go down, it says 20 millimeters, and then you go back, and then you just kind of close it up. And what that does, again, once you create a closed object, it will fill everything in, and it will make a gray shape that we can work with. So then we can go to the push and pull extrude tool and select the push pull button right here. And let's say we want to move it to this standard view, so we can select it. You can kind of see it's like an E out in space. We can select it and then pull it up, and we can see that it changes into a 3D object. We're going to make this 20 millimeters tall, so we just pull it up a little bit and then type in the number 20 and hit enter. And we can see that it becomes into a 3D shape. go back over here and click the orbit tool, and we can kind of pan around and see that it's an E shape right here. So if I go over here and hit the selection tool, this top button right here, you can see if I select it, it only selects one surface of the object. What this object is basically made up of a bunch of different points and lines that are kind of just put together to make this shape. But let's say now, if I zoom out, let's say I want to move this object, this E, for whatever reason back to the origin. It's hard for me, even if I would have to like select everything and then move it back. But when we're modeling things in CAD, an easy thing that we can do is kind of group the objects together so that they basically become one object in itself. So what you can do is use the selection tool and highlight everything. So you can see now everything is this blue outline with these little specks. We can select it and then right click it, and then you can say where it says make group, and what that will do is we'll group everything into one object. So now you can see it's this, you can see that it's this basically this object right here that doesn't have all those speckles on them. It's a single object. And now to move it, we go down to this tool right here that says move, we select it, and we can basically select any one of the points on the object and kind of translate it over to where we need it. So we can zoom out to make things a little bit easier. And then if you select, let's say this back corner right here, you can select it, and then you can move it and kind of place it anywhere you want on the screen or in this 3D environment. So in our case, we want to put it at the origin, so we just move it to the origin. We see it says the word origin, and then right click it, or left click it rather, and then it will basically place it in the right spot for us. And then if we want to move it around, we can do the same thing else. So you can kind of play around with that and get comfortable moving objects around. Likewise, let's say we wanted to rotate an object in a certain angle. We go back to the move tool and then we select the rotate button. And we kind of get this little protractor / compass looking thing. What we can do is, let's zoom in so we can see things a little bit more. And again, I'm zooming in either by using the zoom tool, pinching it, or expanding outwards on the trackpad, or using the scroll wheel. We can kind of place the compass at one corner, and then you kind of define one of the kind of like an axis to start off. So it might not necessarily be the same axes as the red or green or blue axes, but we can kind of define our own axis. To make things simple, in our case, what we can do is we can just set that axis to be just the same axis as the red axis. So you can see that's why it has that red dashed line right there. And then from here, then you can rotate the object like so. So now if I want to put that E at a 45-degree angle with respect to the red axis, I can just type in the number 45 and hit enter. And you can see it's tilted at like a 45-degree angle with respect to that red axis. Now let's say I wanted to flip the object on its side. I can do the same thing. I can select now, instead of before when the compass or protractor was kind of flat on top of the surface of the E, I can kind of put it on the edge of the E right here. And again, I can select right there, and then I can make the, let's say the Z axis or the blue axis. I can just kind of define it going up like this on the blue axis, and then I can kind of rotate it like that, like so. So I can change it to 90 degrees, and now it's flipped on its side with respect to the Z axis or the blue axis. And then finally what I can do is I can kind of just move it back to where it was at the origin. So I can select it, select one of the corners, and then just translate it back to the origin and kind of just place it there. So you can kind of see, once I go to the orbit tool, how it's been kind of changed, how we both tilted it at a 45-degree angle as well as tilted the object on its side. You can kind of look at it from a few different perspectives. Okay, so that's a little bit more about those tools, using the move tool as well as getting more practice using the extrude and push tool. So if you want, I recommend working and kind of making other shapes and just kind of playing around with those tools and getting more familiar with them, as well as just getting more familiar with just moving around in the environment. In the next lesson, we'll talk a little bit about how you make let's say you wanted to start making objects that weren't rectangular in shape. So like if we wanted to make the letter A, for example, or if we wanted to start to make cylinders or rounded shapes, we'll talk a little bit more about that.